So in today's episode, I'm going to talk all about taking amazing photos with your drone. So I've been planning to do this video for a while, but various other things have got in the way, or I've gone out on location and done some, taken some great vlogs. But this week, the weather's been fairly average really, and I've not managed to get out. So I thought it'd be a really good week to talk to you a little bit more about how you can take amazing photographs with your drone. Okay, so I've had a drone for probably about 9 months now, and I got it to improve my cinematography in my videos and to improve storytelling in my videos. But I've started to use it more and more for taking photos of landscapes, and it's stunning. It's absolutely amazing. And it just proves that it's not just about megapixels really to get an amazing photograph. You can do amazing things with the DJI Mavic.
We were down by the river all through the night, watching the stars and the city lights. Right from the start, said we never grow apart, dear Wichita. You wanted me to know, never ever let you go, dear.
So the things I'm going to talk about are the things that I think make a difference to creating a really good photograph. So they are things like light and composition, and I will go over the settings in the Mavic and show you the settings that I use, but also how I edit my photos and finally print my photos as well. Now, there are obviously other DJI or other drones out there that have got better sensors than the Mavic, but I find the Mavic to be much better from a portability point of view. It's a little bit like the iPhone really. You know, if you've got this on you, then it's going to be the best camera there, and it's so easy to carry. And the Mavic's the same. I just sling it over my shoulder in a little bag, and it is just fantastic. So what are the benefits of using a camera like this over something like this, my Nikon D810? The sensor in this and a full frame camera, 36 megapixels, massive dynamic range is completely different. So why don't I just use that? Well, there's one massive benefit, and it's the obvious one. You can get up in the air and you can see things that other camera is not going to be able to see. Now what I find is that it's really useful when you suddenly get some stunning light, but you're not in the location that you want to be. You can just throw it up in the air, not throw it, just get it up in the air, and you can quite quickly get amazing results. So the other benefit is composition. It's so easy, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about composition in a minute, but it's so easy to compose your images with a drone because you've got movement in 3D space effectively. You can go backwards, forwards, left, right, and up and down. So you can get into a position that perhaps you couldn't do if you're walking on a mountain where you're going to be constrained by a path, or there might be a rock face getting in your way. It stops that, and that's one of the things that I find so useful, that I think, I wish I could just get a little bit further over there. Well, the Mavic doesn't stop me getting that image. The D800 does. With the Mavic, I can just get a little bit further, or I can take a different perspective of something. So from that point of view, it's fantastic. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the limitations of it, because there obviously are some limitations, but if you know what those limitations are and you work within them, then you can still get great results. The main limitation is governed by the small sensor size in the Mavic. Obviously that gives you a lower signal to noise ratio. It also has a lot less dynamic range, but that 12 megapixels isn't a huge amount. So what you've got to do is you've got to make sure you don't crop your images. Okay, so let's go on to the process of getting a good photo. So there are 4 things that I did in a video a few weeks ago that apply, in my opinion, to getting amazing photos. And it's no different with the Mavic than it is with any other camera. And that is light, composition, subject, and timing. The most important is light. So light just makes such a big difference. And if you can get up with your drone just after sunrise or just before sunset, or when the light is really dramatic, maybe after a thunderstorm. Don't go in the thunderstorm, but after a thunderstorm or when there's a storm approaching, you're going to get the best result. So I went up to try and get this viaduct that I knew was a local subject that I wanted to photograph when the conditions were right. And the light was just right, and I also had some amazing mist. I managed to get the drone in the air, and the subject of the drone was obviously the viaduct. That made it really easy to produce a great image. What I did is I got up and I tried to find the best composition, and then so that I didn't have to crop the image. I moved it left, right a little bit, and I also took quite a lot of different photos to see how they would work afterwards. And I made sure that I got the timing right, so I knew this location well. I waited for there to be some fog and the light coming from the right direction to cast the shadows through the viaduct. And yeah, the conditions were just amazing, so dramatic, and it allowed me to get this really great image.
Surrounded by colors, it's such a sight. Watching all the lovers fall into the night.
So one thing I'll come onto is the technical aspect of it, but this is a good example of something where you've got to just ensure that you get your exposure right. You don't want to overexpose the highlights in a situation like this where you've got all this mist. And I'm going to come on to a technique that you can use to stop that happening, really. You can massively avoid any chance of that happening. So the viaduct was a fairly obvious subject, but I was in the Lake District a few weeks ago and I posted this photo in one of my vlogs, but didn't talk about it in a huge way. It was a stunning misty morning, and I managed to get my drone just above the mist, and the light rays were coming through the mist. But I wanted to get some sort of subject in it, so I found a house that was sort of hidden in the trees by looking around with my drone, and that house became the sort of subject, but it wasn't an obvious subject, but it allowed you to spend more time looking at the image. You see the light rays, then you might see the house, then your eye might navigate its way around the image a little bit more. So I carefully positioned that house in one of the cross sections of the thirds to ensure that I got a really good composition. Again, this shows that light, composition and timing, in this case, again, the mist made a stunning difference to the quality of this photo. So in terms of how you take these photos and where you take these photos from, the obvious thing to do with a drone is just shoot straight down. But I'm not sure whether that's potentially the best thing to do. It's been done so much now by drones, and I'm not saying you can't get great photos. I've done it a few times and got some good photos down on trees, down with roads. It's really easy to get strong composition by doing that. You can have strong diagonals, and you can really control that diagonal by rotating the aircraft. But I find that actually the best shots are just your traditional landscapes that somebody would maybe not think straight away that was taken with a drone. This photo I took here of Elterwater is a good example of that. You can do a pano with your drone, because I think that makes a really big difference and increases the megapixels. In this particular case, that's exactly what I did. So I found a really good composition. The subject was the lake. The light and the timing was just right, where the sun was just coming and touching the trees. And then what I did is I took a shot pointing a little bit further down, a shot a little bit further up, and then a shot with the sky in it. And then by combining those three shots, it made a really big difference to the quality of the image. And I'm going to talk about Lightroom at the end of the video. So in terms of the technical settings to take these photos, here are the settings that I would recommend. Make sure you have it on 4:3, which is the highest resolution of the Mavic. Sometimes if you go into 16:9, you think, oh, that looks like high resolution because you lose the black bars at the side, but effectively all you're doing is cropping in on that 4:3 image. So you want to stick at 4:3. Ensure your ISO is always 100. Never ever shoot above 100. If it's too dark, then it's probably not going to produce a great image. So I would always limit it to ISO 100. You shoot in RAW, so DNG format on the Mavic, and that then means that the white balance and any sharpness settings or other settings aren't applicable. So you don't need to set those. What I do is I set the white balance as sunny all the time, so that I've not got any different white balances that are put on the image when I look at them in Lightroom. Obviously you can change that white balance afterwards, but if you set it to auto, then the camera will do lots of different white balance settings as you take lots of different photos, and it's difficult then to look at one photo against another. So I just set it on sunny, but like I say, it's a raw image, so you can change that later. It just means that the one that is embedded into that photo for viewing on Lightroom is the same across all the images. Okay, let's go and have a look at how I edit some of these photos once I've taken them in the Mavic. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom, and you can see the images that I took with the drone on that day. I used auto exposure bracketing, and in this case I took 3 exposures. I usually take 5 exposures, and I would thoroughly recommend doing that because it means that you're less likely to miss the correct exposure for your shot. So once I've chosen the images that I think I'm going to are the best representation of the exposure, I choose those 2 images. So it's this one and this one in this case. I can see that they're exposed really well, exposed to the right hand side but not clipping the highlights. And I just right click on them and I photo merge panorama, and I make sure it's set on perspective, which gives the best results. Click merge. You can see now we have a vertical panoramic shot. Now in the drone I took these images in landscape, but the great thing with the DJI is if you wanted to do a horizontal pano, then you can turn the camera in the Mavic to portrait and take your images in portrait and then merge them in that way. So it's really easy to do panoramics, which obviously increase the number of megapixels in your image. Okay, so if we zoom in on this, you can see that it's super sharp. There's no overexposed areas. And I'm just going to now go and do some basic manipulation on it. So the first thing I want to do is, it was a little bit cooler than this on the day, so I'm just going to reduce the color temperature, and it was definitely had a greener feel to it. So I'm going to reduce that tint. Now I might come back to that in a minute. I'm now going to increase the contrast, because with any raw image then it reduces the contrast quite significantly. I'm going to reduce the highlights, and I'm going to add a graduated filter in a minute. So I'm going to reduce the highlights, increase the shadows slightly, reduce the black slightly, increase the clarity just to give it a little bit more definition, and then I'm going to increase the vibrance and the saturation in this case. I really want to add some punch to these colours here. So that's not looking too bad now, but this is burnt out at the top and I need to do a graduated filter for that, and it's all very green. Now one of the things that I can do on the image is I can go to the HSL tab here and I can alter some of the colours. And what I want to do is bring back some of the autumn colours in this particular shot. So I'm going to go into the HSL tab here, and I'm going to go and I'm just going to mess about with the hues of the colours, so I can just go and see how this affects it. So straight away I can see I want to reduce this orange. I'm going to slightly increase the yellow. Now the green's not quite right, so it's a bit too in your face, so I'm going to just make it a little bit more subtle, move it away from that sort of lime green colour, and then again I'm just going to reduce the aqua to do exactly the same. And then I'm also going to alter the saturation on these as well, because I want to increase the saturation of those reds to really bring them out in the image. I'm going to increase them to about plus 19, that'll be fine, 20. Increase the oranges, yeah, so that's pretty good now. So the next thing I want to do is do something with this top area of the image. So I'm going to add a graduated filter on this, and I want to significantly increase the contrast of it. I want to reduce the highlights quite significantly, and I want to reduce the blacks and then increase the clarity to give it a little bit more punch. I probably also just want to make that just slightly warmer as well. So that's not far off now. The final thing I want to do is, and again I'm doing this fairly quick just for this video, but I just want to add a little bit more clarity in that top. So I'm just going to use the dehaze tool. Don't overdo this at all. And then I'm going to again just reduce the highlights again and reduce the blacks. So I want to increase the shadow in this mountain here. So that's not far off. Now I'm looking at the overall colour of it. I think that I probably just want to slightly increase the colour temperature, just make it slightly warmer. Not that warm, about there. Yeah, that's pretty good. I just love drone photography now. It's so great, it's so easy to get just great photographs with your drone. So if you've got a drone like the Mavic, or even the smaller version or the bigger version, then just go and use it more. Winter's a great time to get some great light as well. You don't have to go out really early in the morning or really late at night. And often in the winter you get mists and frost and snow, and it makes such a big difference to the quality of the image that you might be able to get. And you might be able to get some fantastic conditions like this that I printed out on some photospeed paper. It's just stunning. And you know, this one that I just showed you editing just looks fantastic when printed. This is going to go up on my wall. I really love it. The colours have just come out so well in the printed version of it, and it just proves that with that tiny little sensor that you've got on the drone, it doesn't stop you printing something out and putting it on the wall. In fact, I've got an A3 version of a panoramic that I created with the Mavic on my wall. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about a workshop that I've got, a little bit of a plug for a workshop that I've got in the Lake District at the beginning of January, on the 5th of January. It's a group workshop, and I've got a few places left on it. So if you're interested in meeting up with some other photographers and going with me on a day's workshop in the Lake District, then check out the link or go onto my website, and there's a few places left. Okay, until next time, see you next week.
Winter time to spring, I remember